Karen. Thank you all for coming. I know this is not exactly the way I've done it before. It's generally been in person, but with everything that's going on, hopefully everybody's staying safe and everybody's feeling well. My name is Gary Lilicki, social worker by trade. Graduated from Wayne State about 100 years ago or so. Have been involved in the mental health and substance abuse treatment realm most of my career. I do have some experience with EAP work, employee assistance, short-term counseling as well. And I started working with Karen and providing workshops probably about 4 years ago, and doing a variety of different ones. This one specifically on medical marijuana, though we will touch on quite a few aspects of it. Michigan voted in or legalized recreational marijuana in November of 2018. We're one of about 14 states that have legalized the recreational portion of it. As I said, this is going to be focused a little bit more on the medical marijuana. Michigan is one of 33 states currently that have approved medical marijuana for usage. But you know, what's the effectiveness of medical marijuana? What conditions, you know, should it be used for? Is it really the wonder drug that some people, you know, say it is? And you know, what's the different versions of it that can be used, you know, that could potentially be helpful. As I said, it's currently legal in 33 states, including Washington, D.C. I had heard on the news about a week ago, it was a little more, where there's a bill in the House of Representatives right now, in the federal House, to legalize medical marijuana across the country. I'm assuming that's going to take quite a while to kind of work its way through. And as I'm explaining where marijuana sits federally, you'll probably understand that. During the Obama administration, they did not prosecute anybody for using marijuana from a medical standpoint, not even a minor issue with them. When President Trump came in, he promised not to interfere with that as well. In a recent poll from Harvard Health, 85% of Americans supported legalizing medical marijuana. And we know quite a few people use it for pain management. So it may be moving in that direction, we'll have to see. But since 1970, when the Controlled Substance Act came about, marijuana was given a Schedule I substance, and that's the highest level of restriction. So it's considered, marijuana is considered a hallucinogen from a federal standpoint. So it's on the same level as heroin and LSD. And basically their definition is that it has currently no accepted medical usage in the US, and there is a lack of accepted safety of any type of use. So that's from a federal definition standpoint, which kind of gives you a little bit difference, because cocaine is a Schedule II, if it kind of puts it in perspective as to where it's at. In 2016, the DEA was given an opportunity to downgrade marijuana to a Schedule II, and they refused. If it had been downgraded, then the medical marijuana would have been legal in doing that. So we're going to take a look. Where are we at here? Here we go. First, kind of a disclosure statement that's needs to be on there. We're going to take a look at the medical marijuana law in Michigan, short-term, long-term effects of the usage, who should not be using medical marijuana. Medical marijuana in the workplace, very complex issue. current research, and then legal issues that can kind of come along with that. So the medical marijuana program was voted into law in 2008, in November. 63% voted it in, and that would allow the use of medical marijuana to reduce or relieve very specific symptoms of medical conditions. And the specific medical conditions that were put in at that time period was for Alzheimer's, ALS, cancer, Crohn's, hepatitis C, HIV, and the symptoms that they were looking at was the symptoms of wasting away, seizures, pain, nausea, and muscle spasms. And to get a medical marijuana card, you needed to have a letter from your doctor. And this was a doctor that you had a relationship with. So this was somebody that was treating you for one of these conditions that were listed, saying that medical marijuana would be helpful for your medical condition. You had to be over 18 years of age as well. So originally, the state charged $60 fee yearly, and you had to reapply for your card every year, and a $25 fee to register with a caregiver. The caregiver also had to be registered with the state. The caregiver at that time period when it came out was the person who was growing the marijuana for the medical marijuana users. And they could be a caregiver for up to 5 people. And they could grow up to 12 plants per person. So a total of 60 plants they could be growing at any one given period of time. But because marijuana is a Schedule I drug and it's illegal from a federal standpoint, the caregiver could not sell the marijuana to the medical marijuana card holder, but they could be, quote unquote, reimbursed for their costs. So that was very complex as to the kind of the payment system that was there. As of October 2019, the $60 fee was reduced to $40, and there is no fee for a caregiver. And that was because recreational marijuana was passed, dispensaries started opening up, and a medical marijuana person could go to the dispensary if they wished to get it there. Because it is a controlled substance by federal standards, if you have been convicted of a felony in Michigan, you cannot have a medical marijuana card by law in Michigan. Also, and there's no exceptions for that. Also, it's illegal for a person, because it's, again, controlled substance by federal standard, it's illegal to carry a firearm if the person is a user or has reasonable capability of using marijuana. And if you have a medical marijuana card, you'd have the reasonable capability of using. So if you have a medical marijuana card in Michigan, you are prohibited from owning a firearm or ammunition. Any questions on that? All right, so cannabinoid, what is it? Marijuana itself has over 100 active components. THC, which everybody has kind of heard of before, which stands for tetrahydrocannabinol, is the chemical that causes the high that goes along with using marijuana. Now, CBD, which is cannabinoid, is a component of the hemp plant. It has no alteration of consciousness. You're not going to get high using CBD. But a lot of people report using CBD from relieving insomnia, anxiety, and specifically pain. CBD is put into a lot of creams and oils that people use And they say that it really helps, reducing the pain, as well as in a spray that some people use if they have Parkinson's or certain type of cancers that may cause spasms. It relieves the spasms pretty quickly. So that's what people are using the CBD for anyway. So the effects of it, THC itself passes very quickly if you smoke it from the lungs into the bloodstream, and it carries the chemicals to the brain as well as throughout the bodies. And we have cannabinoid receptors in our brain, and the THC fits like a glove into those receptors. So you get the elevated mood, you get the high feeling pretty quickly when you smoke it. If you eat it, so in candies or in gummy bears or in brownies or anything of that nature, if you're eating marijuana, it obviously has to be digested before it gets absorbed. So you may not feel the effects from something that you eat for a half hour to an hour afterwards. That's where some people can get into a little bit of trouble, because after 10 or 15 minutes, they say, I don't feel anything, and they eat more. And then it all kind of catches up with them down the line. So that's not what you want to do, obviously. Marijuana activates, the part of the brain that has the highest number of these cannabinoid receptors. So, short-term effects, you're going to have altered sense of time, mood, you may have memory impairment, depending on the individual and depending on the amount of THC that's in the marijuana that they're smoking or eating, can cause hallucinations and delusions in some people. And then in a smaller number of people, they can also create a psychotic episode. Longer term effects, especially, breathing problems. Our lungs were meant for, taking in oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide. It was never meant to smoke anything. You're going to have breathing problems. They're going to increase your heart rate. Children that are exposed to marijuana in the womb have a greater chance of attention deficit, memory issues, problem-solving abilities, things of that nature. So there are definitely long-term effects that we're aware of. Any questions regarding the effects at all? Okay, so who should not use medical marijuana? Well, obviously, I think women who are pregnant really need to be careful of anything that they're ingesting. But many times, and my wife experiences too, they get nauseous. And medical marijuana is used to treat nausea as one of the symptoms of some of those other conditions that are there. But it has also been shown that the THC can reach the breast milk of nursing mothers, and that can definitely affect the brain development of the child. So that's something that needs to definitely be watched. Teenagers, that's why even 18 is still relatively low. If you remember, our brains develop from the back to the front. So our frontal cortex, which is our seat of judgment and decision-making and control, is not fully developed until we're out of college, really, until then. So teenagers that are using medical marijuana on a regular basis, or even at 18, that prefrontal cortex can get rewired, basically, if it's used on a regular basis. And it will not fully return to normal, even if they stop. So that's a concern that's there, because our learning and exploring and our doing, which would be the gas pedal, versus the impulse control and judgment, which would be the brake, sometimes get crossed. So they can get into some problems and issues that are there. So that's really who should not use. Any questions on that? All right. So workplace issues. Now this can get a little complex. Medical marijuana is not covered under ADA or FMLA. And as I said, it's still illegal under federal law. And many courts across the country are being asked to decide whether medical marijuana should be accommodated under that state law. This is through the Society of Human Resource Management. And the thing is that courts across the country have decided both ways, yes and no. And there is no definitive law that somebody can point to currently and say, yes, this is the one that's in effect, and this is what we're going to be doing. Drug testing cannot show where the marijuana was ingested, so whether it was ingested at home or whether it was ingested at the workplace. So it's very hard to prove unless they are seen or on video or something consuming it while they're at work. And many organizations have substance abuse policies that they say we can test people, randomly. And if you have a positive result, it can lead up to termination. Zero tolerance policies for some companies that, you just test positive and that's all there is. So it is kind of a complex issue because organizations have to comply with both federal and state laws within their HR department. They also have to provide a safe and productive workplace for all the other people who work there. So it kind of crosses, lines, back and forth. Above all that, employers must also accommodate, when reasonable, employees that have a disability that may require, particular medical things, including medical marijuana. But employers do not have to tolerate the use, possession, sale, or purchase of any drugs at work. So if people are impaired, that's not going to help, specifically if you're using, heavy machinery. So it's a complex thing for being on the workplace with medical marijuana. As I said, some courts are making decisions of it, but they're not across the board. They're not making the same decision across the United States. So any questions on that? All right, research. It's becoming more and more part of our culture. As I said, we're one of 33 states that has made medical marijuana legal. One of 14 has made recreational legal. It's definitely becoming more part of our culture. But because for the last 50 years, marijuana has been a Scheduled I substance that basically states there is no medical, it's not used for any type of medical reasons. There has been very, very little research done. The United States government funds a tremendous amount of medical research for a variety of different conditions, for all kind of medical centers and universities. And because it's still considered a dangerous drug, Scheduled I, like heroin, LSD, there has not been a tremendous amount of research done. So to absolutely say, yes, medical marijuana is wonderful, or no, it's not good at all and it's harmful to the body, it's very difficult to make a definitive answer because there's just not been enough research done. Lately, there has been some loosening of that. There's been more research done overseas, Europe, some in Canada, Australia, but it has been a little more focused on the negative than it has been on the positive aspects of the use. So hopefully to be able to have some definitiveness to be able to say, yeah, we want, to know one way or the other. Currently, the National Institute on Drug Abuse said it was going to give a contract to the University of Mississippi, contract to grow 4,500 pounds of marijuana this year, strictly being produced for research, cannabis, that can be distributed around the United States. So that's good. And 9 research grants were handed out, again, from the National Institute to work specifically on CBD, again, which doesn't have any mood altering with it, to see if it can be put into other items besides the creams or the sprays or the lotions, which I had talked about earlier, to see other items that can be put into that could be potentially helpful for pain, because that's really the thing that CBD is working through a lot, which is good. And it's really the most common use, I would say, for medical marijuana is for pain. Now, it's not strong enough to be used after surgery or for like a broken ankle or, something like that. But it's effective for people that have, chronic pain, back pain, or arthritis. And as we're getting older, and I'm definitely one of those people, there's more aches and pains, that are there, and issues with the knees or hips or something, that CBD and the medical marijuana does seem to be helpful in the general pain area of that area. Many other drugs that are out there are very sedating, and people don't like to take them, and sometimes they have a negative effect on their stomach. This seems to not have those particular effects. But again, until there's more research that's done, it's difficult to say for sure that there are no negatives, that goes along with it. The medical marijuana, like I said, is also used for managing nausea and weight loss with cancer patients. That seems to help. It seems to lessen the tremors with people with Parkinson's and with people that are having seizures from other types of conditions that they may have. So the other thing that seems to be happening at the moment that seems to be pretty positive is that medical marijuana is being used with veterans that are coming back from war zones for PTSD. And according to the veterans and the therapists that they're seeing, there seems to be a drastic improvement in many of the veterans in regards to their PTSD with using medical marijuana. So that may, because they're veterans and they're part of the government, that may loosen the restrictions a little bit on some of the research that's being done to be able to help that. So the Center for Cannabis Research at the University of San Diego just got awarded a $3 million grant. They're going to be looking at Parkinson's, arthritis, insomnia, and anorexia, and using medical marijuana to see if that's going to be helping. It's a 5-year study, so we'll see, and that's just starting, so we'll see how that goes. And I've heard some people say, well, in the states that recreational marijuana is, available, why don't you just go to a dispensary and buy a bunch and start doing your research, on it. Again, we go back because it is illegal from a federal standpoint. None of the research would be considered legal if you did it that way. The cannabis would have to come from a controlled area, which, like I said, the University of Mississippi has just been contracted to do that. You'd have to get it from a facility of that nature to be able to do the research that they would look on it and say, okay, we'll see if it works or not. And the government is going to be spending, they set up to $3 million this year to find out if CBD, to relieve pain, obviously. None of it is going to be used for THC. It's only going to be for CBD. So at least there's more research that's going to be done or coming that will be helpful, I think, to all of us to be able to say, is this really something that's going to work, or not? Any questions on any of that on the research?
Who did you say had the $3 million grant for the Parkinson's, arthritis, etc.?
That was the University of San Diego. All right. So legal issues. Again, we got the state laws and the federal laws that are crossing over one another. As I said earlier, there is a bill that was introduced into the House a week ago, 10 days ago, to legalize medical marijuana. I have a feeling that's going to, be there for a while in discussion because there's, with it still being a Scheduled I, if it's bumped down to a Schedule II, there's a possibility things may change, but right now the way it is, I'm not sure on that, but there's definitely a cross between state laws and federal laws at this point. And Michigan has both medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. So we are a little more flexible in this state. But we, as professional healthcare professionals, still need to understand, the law. Because if you're discussing it with medical marijuana with some of your patients, or, if they're thinking about it and they're bringing it to you and discussion of it, we got to know how to advise, so we're not telling them to do something, illegal or something that is not going to be appropriate, for them. And with the lack of research, we still don't know everything that we should know because of the lack of research over the past 50 years to be able to definitively say, yes, yes, it is, or no, it's not. So it's one of those things. Question came in, it said, how much CBD is used, allocated per person, and how often can it be used? Based from my understanding, the CBD is generally, as I said, infused into some type of spray or a cream or a liquid of some sort. And so you would buy a bottle of that. I'm not sure how many bottles you can buy at any one given period of time. But the people that I have spoken to who use it that way will put cream on their knee or their back or, wherever they're having the chronic pain. They use it daily because you don't get high off of it. It just is, and it's more of a external thing. Now the spray, which I said can be used for people that are having a seizure or prone to tremors or something of that nature. It's generally sprayed under their tongue. And again, it's generally used when they're having it or starting to experience that. And that seems to calm them down at that point. So that would be used as needed, I guess, the spray one. So we need to stay up to date on our state laws, and the federal laws, because it is still, illegal from a federal standpoint. Our state keeps track, obviously, of how many people have a medical marijuana card with names and addresses and stuff. So you'd be registered with the state that you have a card. So if there was any potential issue, or if you lost your card or something like that, they would have record of it, and you would be fined if you happen to be stopped with it. So. And Claudia said, yeah, I've used CBD ointment on my arthritic shoulder and topical cream, and it works. That's what I've heard. Like I said, from friends of mine that use it for knee pain and back pain, that it definitely works.
I have a question, Gary. In that situation there, what is working, the CBD ointment or the ibuprofen cream? Because she's using both.
Oh, that's a good question. Don't know.
Claudia, you want to answer that? Are you using both?
I do use both, but can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, but sometimes I just use the CBD ointment, and it works. Charlotte's Web seems to be the best one. It's, kind of expensive, but it's worth it. And it just soothes the pain. It doesn't really take everything away.
Makes it manageable.
Pardon?
Makes it manageable.
Makes it manageable. But, I have problems with my shoulders from swimming. So it's just part of my routine to help soothe it and really relax it, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. So yeah, I like it. I believe in it. Yeah.
Okay. Gary, there's a question here.
Yep.
Why do you need a medical card if in fact recreational is legal?
Well, that is true. From a federal standpoint, though, we got to remember that it's still illegal. And if the federal agents, wanted to do anything, even with medical marijuana, they could, because it's an illegal substance. But you are allowed to have so much marijuana on you with a medical marijuana card. And if you were ever stopped, like I said, the state has a register that you are registered, with the state with that. I think there may be less people getting medical marijuana cards because it is recreationally, legal in the state, but it's not legal federally at all. And that's a sticking point. And if they wanted to make a case out of it, the federal agents could make a case out of it.
So which law takes precedence since illegal federally?
It's still illegal federally. And nobody's making a case out of it at the moment. But they could.
Okay.
Because it is illegal. Now, again, we'll see what happens with the bill in the House, how far that goes and how long it would take, to get medical marijuana legal. And then it would drop from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 2. But boy, that would really open up research, and, it'd be a little bit easier to not worry about it so much.
Okay, you can go to the next slide if you're done with this. I think there's no more questions.
And then these are just some resources. If you want to know more about the Michigan Marijuana Program, you can certainly go on there. National Clearinghouse gives you up-to-date medical research that's going on, literature that's out there from universities and such. Definitely does not tell you to use it or not use it, but it's there from a scientific standpoint anyway, to basically say, okay, here's what's available. And then the other one that I had found is a summary of articles from scientific and medical journals that are there, to be able to just particularly focus on, this particular subject and not have to go through all the different journals to look at different things. So just a couple different resources that are there. Another one from Shelley saying, is THC or CBD helpful for nerve pain? That's a great question. I'm not sure on that, and I don't want to give the wrong advice. But it would seem to me that, the CBD cream, that would be able to diffuse in would probably be helpful, just based on what I've read, but not here to give advice on that one way or the other.
Hey, Gary, I had a question
Yes.
about workplace.
Mhm.
When you're drug testing, do they test for both CBD and THC? Or if you just use CBD, does that show up?
I don't think it does. I don't, because you're not ingesting it. So the THC would show up for sure. And
Thank
the
you.
the THC kind of gets housed in our fat cells. So it can last for a lengthy period of time. So if you're a recreational smoker and you don't smoke very often, but you smoke on a weekend and the following Thursday or Friday you get tested, you would test positive because it's still in your system.
I also had I don't know if you guys are done that I could say this, but as a social worker, I think we're starting to see more issues with smoking, even if it's medical marijuana, in housing facilities that accept federal funding. We're actually starting to see in the city here them installing devices that are monitoring not only for tobacco smoke, but marijuana smoke.
Wow.
They will be issuing eviction notices if their smoking ban is violated at least 3 times. And I was just going to throw that out there for any discussion people might have about that. But I think it's interesting what we have coming, and it's going to be sad. We may see a lot of evictions in our area.
I didn't hear that before. That's very interesting.
Wow, yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions at all?
There's someone that asked if the THC or CBD helpful for nerve pain.
Yeah, I had answered that before. I thought it
Oh,
was
I'm
a
sorry.
CBD that might be because it diffuses with a cream or something, but
Okay.
I wasn't given any advice one way or the other because I have not tried either for nerve pain, but it would, based on what I've read, I think it would be the CBD. So
I agree.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I am done.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
I have one question.
Went through a little quicker. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a correlation between a person, like a young adult, smoking marijuana to have a first psychotic break?
Well, that's a good question. Back when I worked inpatient psychiatric early in my career, I worked for 10 years at a couple different hospitals. We did see, a handful of younger people, 16 to 20, 21, come in with their first psychotic break, where they had gone to a concert or a party and had used some type of substance. Could have been marijuana, could have been, mescaline, could have been something. And, the question was, did this usage cause the psychotic break? Or were they being held with Band-Aids? And this kind of opened the door to lower the inhibition, and it came out. And we discussed that ad nauseum, because generally, people that unfortunately are schizophrenic are going to have their breaks earlier.
Right.
So, as I said, marijuana is considered, hallucinogen. Part of the thing with marijuana today versus back in the day when I was in high school, marijuana back then, the THC level was like 3 to 5%. In the 90s, that was up to 7 to 9, 7 to 10%. Today, it's 18 to 25%, depending on the particular marijuana you have. So the THC level is tremendously higher than it was back when I was in high school. And that alone could trigger things in people that they may not normally have because the THC level is so high. And again, because of lack of research, there is no research that says one way or the other that higher level of THC is going to help with medical marijuana any better than 3 to 5%. So that's the other thing that's kind of going on now is the THC level is so much higher.
Mhm. We get a lot of young people coming into the hospital, college students, and they all have the one thing in common. They all smoke marijuana. So that's why I asked.
It could be, or they, as I said, they could be unfortunately heading down that path, and this just kind of opened the door for them.
Thank you.
Hey, Gary, have you heard, you're talking about the strengths of the marijuana when, in the 90s and when you were in school and all that. But I've come across stevia, indica, and hybrid. Do you know anything about those three things? Anybody in the room know anything about
isn't stevia like a sweetener of some kind?
No, it's different strengths of marijuana or
Oh,
what certain things do. If you smoke a hybrid kind of marijuana, an indica marijuana, I guess it's a different type of buzz you get off of these things.
Well,
and
I'll have to look into that.
And some people have said, like, oh, stay away from stevia. That's the strongest strength. And I don't know who was telling me this and why we were talking about it. Because I think, I'll say it. I used to smoke pot when I was in high school and, back in the day, but it's like, that's the new thing people talk about now is stevia, STE. Here, I'll type it in there.
Yep.
It's stevia, indica, and hybrid. Those are the three, and that's from highest to the lowest strengths.
Karen, what was the second one again?
Oh, here, she just corrected me, Natalie. Sativa, not stevia. That's stevia. It's sativa. I typed it in the chat room. If you see the chat notes.
Oh,
Well, I will look those up, Karen, and find out.
Okay, and Jamie has a question. Jamie, go ahead.
I don't have a question. I was just gonna offer. So a sativa, the difference between the sativa, the indica, and the hybrid is that the sativa, they say more is like of an upper. It doesn't mellow you out as much. It does give you like a sensation of like a high, but you're still pretty functional. Whereas an indica, you're high and like are more sleepy, essentially. Like it's more of a downer. And then the hybrid is somewhere in between the two. So
That's
and then,
yeah.
then it depends on who you talk to, really, because then some people are like, that's kind of just like like a mental thing, and people are like, oh, I'm more of a sativa. It's like a preference, essentially. So sometimes it's just the mood that you're in.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. So I guess you wouldn't give a sativa marijuana to somebody that has dementia.
No, I mean, obviously I'm not a doctor and I wouldn't know how to indicate
And that's
that,
what we were talking about.
Yeah.
That's why it's all coming back to me now. Because
Yeah,
people
you
were asking,
definitely.
my brother was asking me, unfortunately, I have a sister-in-law who's early 60s that has dementia or Alzheimer's. And he said, do you think I should give her, any of this marijuana stuff? I'm like, I don't know, and how do you know what you're getting when you go to the store to buy it? Do they say the
So
strength?
yeah, there's definitely ways for them to kind of measure out. I think if you're going to use it for medicinal purposes, a lot of times people try to do edibles instead because edibles are easier to dose out.
Oh,
And so if you give someone a few milligrams of an edible, then it could just help mellow them out rather than, where if you were to let them smoke a sativa, it might give them a little bit more of an anxious feeling. So I
yeah.
guess it depends on the person, but I mean, if anybody is asking to try, obviously the best thing to do is just to always have them try the least amount possible.
And do you get these reactions from edibles as well as smoking it? Do you know, or in the oils or the creams? I mean, like that's the creams are more like CBD, not THC. These would be THC levels. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about like the THC, like medicinal edibles. Those
Sure.
are different. The CBD ones are lighter, and like you guys were talking about earlier, they're not like really, because there's not THC in the CBD. It's not like when you get drug tested or whatever, it would come up. That's why it's like sold almost everywhere now and people use it. But if you're getting the ones from like the dispensary that you would need a card for, or not those ones, those edibles, people also react differently because you're ingesting it like and it goes through your stomach. So some people can have like bad reactions to it as well. That's why it's always better to start small.
It does take longer to get the high though,
It
because
does.
it has to be digested. So
Exactly.
Edibles have a strong.
And that's why people can have bad reactions, because they'll eat a little bit and then not feel anything. And then
right.
they'll eat more and more. And then when it hits them, they get sick.
Yep.
Gary, I have
Sorry.
a question. This is Andy. There is something called, I don't know, it starts with a K, that you see some of the head shops and stuff offering it. I want to say Camden or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. Are you familiar with it?
I am not. Maybe somebody else on the phone is. I am not.
No, I've never heard of it either.
Oh,
It's supposed to be some kind of alternative, but it was a couple of years ago, it started coming into vogue, I guess, and they were having a lot of problems with young people that were having some serious issues from it. Crampton, yes. Kratom.
Kratom.
oh,
Yes,
that was the synthetic marijuana.
yes. Do you know
Yeah,
anything about that?
they were having a lot of problems with it because of the chemicals that were there. I think if my memory serves me correctly, because you are going back quite a few years, I think that was coming in from China.
Yeah.
Or from the east somewhere. But the chemicals that were there in there were causing a tremendous amount of problems for people.
But they're still selling it in some places. So they haven't banned it, obviously.
Well, again, this is articles that I've read, when they took it and analyzed exactly what it was, and they put a ban out on those particular chemicals that were in that packet, the company then changed one or two of the chemicals and it wasn't banned.
Oh, okay.
And then they ban that and they change it again and then it's not banned. So it's a constant flow with the FDA or the DEA of trying to corral those companies to make sure that it's not sold. But you're right, it's a revolving door.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is really
Yeah.
good.
Good discussion.
Good discussion for sure. Thank you, Gary. And we just want to make sure you guys received in the email, your evaluation, fill that out, send that back to me, or that will come back to me automatically, and certificates will go out in 2 weeks. And that's it. So everyone have a good night, and we will see you soon, okay? Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Bye-bye.
bye-bye.